it started like a very good night for Dortmund, and it started like a very difficult night for Stuttgart. So, for a long time, if we wanted to do the bad story first, it sounded like it will be Stuttgart and the great story will be Dortmund. But Dortmund are Dortmund, so they messed up a 2-0 lead, lost this game 5-2 to Real Madrid. A game, I only watched it in glimpses. I focused mostly in the Stuttgart game. You focused entirely on Dortmund. But, Stefan, this 5-2 defeat to Real Madrid seems unnecessary.
Yeah, unnecessary, disappointing. The word I used at full time was dispiriting, just because it felt like it drained any enthusiasm that Dortmund fans may have had at halftime. And obviously we've got a couple in our group chat, on the subscriber chat and Substack, and everyone was elated and making jokes and laughing at halftime. And we kind of joked with a lot of subscribers beforehand that the way that Dortmund seemed to go, you wouldn't be surprised if they won this game, just because they've obviously been so kind of poor in the recent games. And it was a game that was kind of set up for Dortmund to do the unexpected, and then they obviously do exactly that through some outstanding football. And for anyone who doesn't catch this game, I really should say it's worth watching the highlights, but it's also just kind of maybe watching the game back to see that first 45 minutes to see what this Dortmund team are actually capable of. They played some outstanding attacking football, fluid attacking football, and they really took the game to Real Madrid with two outstanding goals from Gittins and Daniel Malin. And It just fell apart at half-time, and I'll explain in a minute, but I just kind of wanted to accentuate the positives for as long as I possibly could, because I thought Sahin actually got it set up, really perfectly set up, in the sense that he had three very dynamic forwards who all work very well with one another. Guirassy is a target man. Daniel Malin and Gittins also work really well off him. I thought Julian Brandt looked tremendous in the first half because he was played in that pocket in a number 10 role. Not just from attacking sense, but he's also just great from a kind of counter pressing sense as well. He's just very good at disrupting opposing teams in the way that they play out from the back in that position. And then you had Nemcha and Sabitzer in the middle of the park, who are both very physical, both very industrious, both more than happy to kind of gallop up and down the pitch for the entire game. And I'd say Dortmund really had the better of Real Madrid in that first 45 minutes, to the extent that actually, if you look at their first half stats, Dortmund finished the first half with 1.38 expected goals to Real Madrid's 1.16. Madrid had one shot on target, Dortmund had 5. And then it all just imploded. And I think there's two things we have to bear in mind here. Number one is that this is what Real Madrid do. They've been slow. It's also just classic Real Madrid in the group stages of the Champions League. They're always like this. They kind of try to get through in first gear, knowing that they have these kind of world-class players that can kind of get them out of jail for free when necessary. We saw it against Stuttgart, where equally Stuttgart had a very strong first half of the game, and then Real Madrid kind of went on to build momentum in the second half. And that's just always going to be the case when you have players of that quality up front. But the crucial thing in this game that I think we really have to focus on is the fact that Nuri Sahin more or less laid out a red carpet for Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. and what happened to be Valverde, of all people, to score the goals by the tactical and substitute decisions that he made. So at half-time, when Dortmund are 2-0 up, he takes off Gittins, who I must say was tearing a hole through Real Madrid's backline for 45 minutes. Real Madrid couldn't get anywhere near him. Take him off for Anton, and then Real Madrid scored 2 goals. And then instead of maybe trying to get back into the game, Nuri Sahin then brings on Pascal Gross for Daniel Malin. And can't really overstate how much that just completely castrated, for lack of a better word, Dortmund's attack, because all of a sudden, in both like literally and mentally, in the sense that, well, maybe not literally, obviously, but in the sense, like physically, in the sense that Dortmund's 2 best players in the first half, Dortmund's 2 outballs in the first half, 2 players, I mean, I thought Daniel Malin had the run of Mendy on the left side. I thought Gittins had the run of Valverde on the left side. And so much so that Real Madrid were basically having to pour so much of their resources to try to cover their fullbacks to make sure that Dortmund didn't counter-attack, didn't have the ability to hurt them. And then Nuri Sahin basically does Real Madrid a huge favour by bringing both players off and playing defensive players in their stead. And while people might think, well, of course you would throw in defensive players to stop Real Madrid from scoring, as I said in the group chat when it was, I think at this point, still 2-2, the problem with this Real Madrid team and the way that you try to address them is that even though it might seem intuitive to sit deep, put men behind the ball, flood your box, and just kind of pray for the best, that actually kind of suits this Real Madrid team because it allows them to get their best players on the ball. You know, Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. aren't players that need to be played into the box. They're players who want to pick up the ball on the edge of the box. And if you sit deep and play defensively, you're giving them the ball in those areas. And I just think the difference between the first half and second half was that the first half, if I had to sum up, was, you know, the shot of Gittins or Daniel Malin attacking Real Madrid's defence rather. And the second half was watching Nicolas Sula tie himself in knots trying to keep up with Vinicius Jr. And the only way you take the ball away from Vinicius Jr. in that situation is by keeping it up the other end of the pitch. And it just felt to me like, I mean, I'm really reluctant to try and pour too much contempt or frustration or criticism on Dortmund because they're up against the European champions, they're up against, you know, one of the most star-studded teams in the history of football. So, you know, I don't want to sit here and say they should have went out there to win that game, but it just felt like such an opportunity lost in the sense that it came down to Nuri Sahin's very naive, very inexperienced tactical changes. And unfortunately, it's just something we've seen time and time and time again where Dortmund have players who can win games for them with tremendous talent and tremendous ability, and that's what we saw from Gittins, Malin and Guirassy in that first half. But in time after time after time, Nuri Sahin and his tactics get in the way of this team. And in my opinion, undoubtedly are holding them back. Sorry for that rant.
No, I think it's a very good analysis of the little bit that I've seen during this game. I was baffled by the substitutions. Like you, I think they came too early. And I was baffled by some of the mistakes that you see them make in the second half to let Real Madrid back into the game. And I think the most criminal aspect of all of that is that a big portion of this team really should have known better because it's only been a few months since they played them in a much bigger game, of course. So it isn't like this Dortmund team wasn't going to be aware of what they were going to face, right? And you can say, yeah, Nuri Sahin, inexperienced coach, and he's going to learn from that. But he was literally on the sidelines for the Champions League final, Stefan. Like he's seen firsthand the problems that come if you don't fair and square put Real Madrid away. And I think that is where you can maybe say, oh, he lost the coaching battle to Carlo Ancelotti, and it is really unfortunate because he set his team up for success, but then changed it to what was a very heavy-handed defeat in the end.